In school, I was a student that had massive potential and I was quite popular. I had my friends tell me that I was smart and intelligent, and I would even hear this from the teachers. My friends were actually the ones that made school a lot more worthwhile, and without them I would have found it really boring. I remember having so many great conversations with them. Despite having a lot of friends, I would actually prefer a lot of alone time, and I would spend a lot of time by myself, especially during break and lunch times. Oftentimes after school I would see groups of boys getting on the bus and they would stop by the fast food store where they would go grab a bite to eat and have a lot of fun socializing with each other, and this was totally the normal way for students to have fun after school with their friends. I never got to experience any of that, but for me that was okay because I knew when I got home I would get to spend time exactly the way I wanted to. Back then I would play on the PS3 and I would play games like FIFA 12 and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 with my friends and family, and I'd be spending hours on these games because they were my therapy and they were my escape from reality, and they were just so much fun. The years that I remember mainly are from years 2012 to 2016 because they were really the best years of my life, and it's because I had the flexibility to do things the way I wanted to, and I never really had that many responsibilities to take care of, and a lot of the pressures were already taken care of by my family. And if I was to describe that time in one word, I would say it was blissful. It really was just freedom. Honestly, it was the best it got. And you might be thinking at this point that surely nothing would have gotten in the way and disrupted my life the way it was at that point. Well, to be fair, that is actually after 2016 things started to go downhill for me and my life would really come crashing down at that point. I had to start facing reality and start coming to terms with the consequences of the decisions I had made beforehand. Things were actually going quite wrong at that time. Honestly, the atmosphere of my life started to change and it was nowhere near what it was like between that time period, and it left me feeling quite depressed and anxious because I didn't really know where things were going to end up because of the decisions I had made. I want you to know that if you don't spend time properly throughout your teenage years, then you will be facing harsh consequences in the future and your life will just take such a bad turn and it will be very difficult for you to enjoy your life. Well, you might be wondering, who the heck am I to even tell you how to live your school life? Well, I'm Abdul and I used to be a student and I made many mistakes throughout my school life which led to me taking a lot of wrong turns which didn't help me to develop my future, and I had to let go of a lot of opportunities, and which eventually led to me being unemployed after graduating from university. And honestly, I did not imagine I would be in this position, and it is far from the life that I used to live. And I want to share with you 4 tips I wish I had taken when I was a student, and it is to help you build a solid foundation and set you up for success in the future. And I really don't want you to end up in the same position as I am in right now, and I hope that it will save you years of your life. So with that being said, let's dive right into it. I had a horrible habit of leaving my homework till the night before the next day of school, and I would be rushing through the homework. I'd be like, okay, I'd be spending like I need to be in bed in 20 minutes, so I'll just rush wherever I could. Some of the answers I wouldn't answer them, and I would just answer the stuff I knew somewhat, just very briefly, and it was just so that I could say I'd done the homework. But I always had this mentality that I would always do it later, and that led to me actually leaving out a lot of homework, and I would be hoping that the next day the teacher wouldn't ask, if I had done the homework, because then I would get a detention. And back then the detention time was 20 minutes for someone who didn't do their homework, or depending on the severity it would go up to an hour. But for the homework that I did do, because I rushed through it, a lot of the times the grade that I got back was very low, and it's no surprise because I did not put that much effort into it and I never gave myself enough time to revise the topics properly so that I could give the questions my best shot. Over time I noticed the same thing started to happen with my revision. It leaked from my homework to my revision, and it was like I wouldn't spend enough time on the revision. It was a whole year worth of content that I needed to revise, and I would always like prolong it and just be like, I'll just wait until later to do it because I was a kid. I wanted to spend time playing games and just enjoying myself. The last thing I wanted to do on a Friday night or a Saturday night was spend time in the books, and I would just avoid it, and I saw it as a drag and I couldn't be asked to do it a lot of the times. But the issues happened when the exam seasons came, because This was the dreaded moment. Every March to June is literally a student's worst nightmare, because they would be having to prepare for the exams, and for those people who didn't prepare that well, they would be cramming a lot of the information in, and that was the same position that I was in. And a lot of the times before the exams, I would be predicting what kind of questions would come up, because I knew I never left myself enough time to revise the whole year's worth of content, and I would just be predicting what might come up. And a lot of the times I was right, but it wasn't that good, because it required a lot more in-depth knowledge, some of the questions in the exams, and I didn't have that, and I was just kind of briskly going over the content, so I could only answer some of them properly. Anyhow, when I did get the grades back for those exams, I tried not to care that much, but eventually it did catch up to me, and I would actually get quite upset whenever I used to get a bad grade. But I couldn't have complained that much, because I never put the effort in for them. And what was kind of rubbing salt in the wounds was when I used to see my friends getting good grades, and I thought that these were the grades that I was very capable of, but because of my lack of effort, I was never able to achieve it. And honestly, it just used to irk me when I used to see people do better than me. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to sort this habit out. I would still leave myself very little time to prepare for the exams, and I was just very stupid back then. And this just led me to cram a lot, stay up late, and at some points I just wasn't even bothered. I just thought, you know what, let's just wing it and see how the exam goes. And every year I would have to be resitting some of the exams from the previous year, because they were so bad. And remember, I mentioned in the beginning that other students thought of me as smart. It was that kind of set an expectation that I felt like I needed to uphold, and when it came time for the exams, I felt like I was letting myself down and letting others down as well. And it was like an added pressure, which when I was failing my exams, that's the last thing I wanted to worry about. And honestly, it could have been a lot better, but it is what it was. Looking back now, if I had just taken my studies a lot more seriously, I would have been able to really see what I was capable of at school. I never gave myself a chance to do that. And when you work hard for something, you feel a lot more accomplished and a lot more fulfilled. You feel good about yourself, and that's the whole purpose about it. And I would have given myself a lot more opportunities when it came time to applying for university and studying different subjects at university. And honestly, I just let myself down so badly. It's just horrible. I would have been able to learn a lot of key skills like discipline, time management, and resilience as well. So I want you to learn from my story. I really want you to take your studies seriously, and at the very least, it will give you a chance to prove to yourself what you are truly capable of and give you a lot more opportunities moving forward. During PE, I never really liked to move around that much because I was such a lazy kid. I remember during some of the sessions when we were out on the field or we were, playing football, we would just be speaking amongst each other, and whenever the teacher used to come around, we would pretend that we were playing football, and it's because we would get told off if we weren't doing a PE, otherwise it's just free time, and we would do whatever it took to just make sure that the time passed, and it was pretty silly. In particular, I hated rugby because the time I just happened to do it, it was like I wasn't the only one doing PE. Our group, it was a few other groups, and we would have like a rota. So some of us would be, one group would be doing tennis, one group would be doing football, one group would be doing another sport, and at that time we just happened to do rugby, and it just happened to be winter, so the outside was very cold. And I remember this one time we were going out on the field, and I think it was like a Thursday morning, and it used to be for about, it was a double session, so 1 hour 40 minutes, and my hands were frozen and it was drizzling, the mud was wet, and we had to practice tackling each other, and I remember it was crap. Honestly, that's the last thing you want to do on a Thursday, and especially in the morning as well. It's like when the weather's so cold, you don't really want to be practicing that sort of stuff. And as you would know, rugby, it requires a little bit of physical strength, and that's something I never had when I was younger. So I kind of avoided exercises or sports that required you to barge into one another or have some sort of physical interaction. I didn't like those sports. I much preferred sports like basketball and badminton, is because they could be done indoors and it was just much easier. You didn't have to move around much at all because all the equipment was inside and it was easier to set up as well. But here's the thing, I missed out on so many opportunities to improve my physical health, which is something I'm actually doing nowadays, and it would have given me something to look forward to in the week. You know, for example, if I had picked up a after school sports club, then I would have had something to look forward to once in the week, like, or whatever day it was, I think Wednesday, Thursday, depending on the sport that you've done. And it would have helped out with my mental health as well, is because physical activity, it releases hormones like serotonin and dopamine, which are the feel-good hormones. And when you are going through school, maybe it would help you with your studies. You know, you're feeling a lot more motivated after a day of doing physical activity and spending time the way you wanted to. Throughout the year, you would have students who engaged in the after school clubs. They would have like sessions where they would go to other schools and they would play competitive sport with other students from other schools, and it would have been really nice to experience that, you know, that competitive element of sports. I mean, it's a shame because I never expressed any interest in any of them, so I couldn't, you know, the most I got was after school club playing football, and it was like the beginning of a tournament. That's pretty much the closest I got, and because I was so bad at the sport, I don't think I got called up again after that. So if you are in a similar position now, I would urge you to pick up on some sort of sport, because it will really help you it'll put yourself out there and you will learn a lot of different skills depending on what the sport is. And it doesn't have to be a sport, it can just be an activity that will just be like a relaxation thing, something that will take your mind away from studying all the time. And I say it with caution because you don't want to neglect your studies, but you don't want to just be focusing on studies all the time. It's just about having a good studying and enjoying balance. So you already know that I was a lazy student, but it actually started to affect my personal life as well. It wasn't just about school. I actually wasn't bothered to do anything. When it came time to learn some new skill or whatnot, it was like I was thinking to myself, why the heck would I spend time? I'm already spending time doing studying at school. Why would I want to spend more time outside of school studying? And of course, things like games and watching TV was just much easier to do. It was just much more enjoyable. And that led to me to be a very boring kid. All I was really doing was going to school, doing all the stuff there, and then coming back and then spending time the way I wanted to. It was never really utilized building any skills. For a bit though, I was into reading these books. I actually collected 27 of these books, you can see just on the shelf behind me, and these were nice because I actually used to see kids in the library pick up these books and read them, and I thought, you know what, why not just pick up these books and start reading them? And they were such a great pastime. The stories are actually quite good. Aside reading these types of novels, I wasn't into reading at all in general. Like, for example, why the heck would I want to read an autobiography about someone, how they lived their life, or do that on, again, a Friday or Saturday night when you can spend time doing something else? I was actually into programming a little bit. I remember in school during DT, the teacher had actually made like a little traffic light, and it was made out of acrylic and wood, and it used to have a button on the side, and when you used to press the button, so when you used to turn on the traffic light, it would just be on green, and when you press the button, after a few seconds it would go amber and then red, and then it would have like wait at the bottom, like the word. It was acrylic and it was laser cut, so it had two words, wait and go, and then after a few seconds it would go from red to green, and that fascinated me so much. I downloaded the software that was used to make that particular hardware, to program the hardware, and I would go home and get all the equipment. So I'd get the LEDs, get the little wires, and at home I would even be soldering them, and that was really nice. But I didn't actually go and develop this skill much further. Only now I'm into programming, but before then it was just like a passing thing, just a little hobby. I didn't care too much about it, and by limiting a lot of my potential for building these sort of skills, it led to me not really taking responsibility, and I lacked a lot of discipline, and I wasn't really able to do much. I was just someone who was so bland as a student, and I had really no other attributes that would make me quite successful in the future. So my suggestion to you would be to pick up on some sort of skill. It could be a high income skill such as copywriting or programming or even learning a language. And you might not think that it would help you now, but I'm sure sometime in the future the skills that you would have developed from learning this, they will come in handy in the future. For example, we mentioned before discipline and resilience and time management, those things, they're going to help you so much when you are moving on with your life later on. And finally, the last point I wanted to discuss with you is really just to enjoy your time when you are going throughout your school life. When you are a teenager, you really don't have that many responsibilities, especially compared to someone who is an adult, is working a 9-to-5 job and has to put food on the table for their family. You have so much more free time to really spend it the way you want to, and I would recommend that you spend it, learning things as previously spoken about. And I know there are teachers at school. I remember when I was at school, I used to hear teachers say like, there were some teachers that used to exaggerate like how serious it is if you don't do your homework, or if you get a bad grade every now and then, or when you used to mess about as a kid. But these are the years where you can actually do that sort of stuff and get away with it. Later on in your life, when you have a lot more responsibilities and a lot more pressures to deal with, you won't really have the luxury of messing up too much. I mean, you could potentially lose your job in those situations. So use school as like a training ground to just practice so many different things and give yourself a lot more chance to explore different things and opportunities that you might find enjoyable, and you actually really never know where those could end up, where those could lead you in the future. I do want to say just enjoying your time with caution, because I don't want you to neglect your studies, but I also don't want you to pass up on opportunities that can help you when you do finish school and go on to your working life. As seen from my story, I really want you to spend a lot of time in your school to focus on your studies and pick up on any opportunities and things that will help you to develop yourself further. If I could rewind time, I really would have done so many things differently, and I would have indulged in a lot more activities that would have been so helpful at this moment in my life at the moment. And moving forward, if I had developed my skill sets much further, then I wouldn't have even been unemployed right now. So I want you to make choices that your future self will be thankful for. Use your time wisely, and not only do good in school, but really spend time on other things that will help you to progress you throughout your future. If you would like to know what my opinions and thoughts are on being unemployed, then be sure to check out this video over here. And one last point, I really want you to spend your teenage years wisely and make sure that you make the most of it, because this time will never come back. I wish you the best of luck. Take care.